There he is. Okay. Keith, would you like to review the agenda, or does Ian need to do it? Either one of you.
I can do it. Thank you, Madam President.
Mhm.
Only two agenda items this evening. One is for Girl Scout Troop 57074. It's a commendation. You'll hear more about that in the regular meeting. And then the only other agenda item is the consideration of the award of the Public Safety Center roof replacement rebid contract. We bid this last year. The number came in well above the budgeted number. So you'll hear about that issue as well in discussion. But I'll steal somebody's thunder and say that the bids came in much better than last year or so. That is
Good
all.
news. Such an exciting commission meeting upcoming. Stay tuned, right? Okay, so we'll go right into the indoor tennis season. Darren, the floor is yours, or Dave.
Well, let me just start off by saying Darren and I have had some meetings, and we've discussed our plans for how we would like to roll out our first foray into the indoor tennis season. I'm sorry, I'm dividing my attention here with trying to get the slideshow to actually get going here. Custom.
All the way to the left, David, where it says from
beginning. Okay, so anyway, we've refined our plans and then sat down with the indoor tennis board. We've gone on a long journey together, and we thought it was very important to not only draw from their experience and learn from their history of running it for so long, but also just to get sort of their buy-in. We wanted to come up with a plan that we felt that they approved of and were comfortable with in that transition. So they've been great partners. They've really helped us with the transition and get things established. So I will turn it over to Darren to share some of the details of that plan.
Thank you. Good to be with everyone again. My last presentation, I mentioned indoor was coming up, and it's coming up even closer now. So we're hoping to get our plan in place and put this out to the public in the next week or so. So yeah, the summer has really flown by for us, but it's a good thing. So kind of basically I went through looking over this before all of this. I went through a few iterations in my mind of kind of how I envisioned indoor operations to go, whether I would think about, discussing with David and Keith, bringing subscribers back or potentially not. But basically what we came back to is not trying to reinvent the wheel the first year. Indoor has done a fantastic job for years, and they have the framework in place. I've done research to the bubbles in the area, and they all seem to do subscribers and have prime time and things that I'm going to mention here soon. So that's kind of what we're doing for this upcoming year. Not too much has changed from what their operations did last year, just some minor differences that I'll talk about here shortly. So first up, just kind of our dates of what we're thinking. This may change a day back or a day forward, but we're planning for the indoor season to start Monday, October 7th, and then go through April 14th of next year. Tentatively, we're hoping the bubble will go up. We're working through that with our contractor now on September 21st, and then we'll hope to bring that bubble down on April 19th. Mirroring indoor rates last year, I didn't feel like it was time to raise these rates, judging from what I saw in the other areas. So the subscriber per hour will stay the same for prime time and regular time. So the prime time is kind of those peak times during the week and weekends that are a little higher rates, and that's normal for the area. So 35, and the regular time outside of prime time would be 29 per hour. And then walk up anything non-subscriber for prime time would be 38, and then the regular time 32. So just subscribers get a little bit of a discount by committing to that kind of 27-week period, and then any person that walks up pays a little bit higher rate. Prime time kind of mirroring around the area and what indoor did last year. So Monday through Thursday, 6 to 10 p.m., Saturday from 8 to 5, and then pretty much all day Sunday. Fridays seem to be pretty slow, so none of those times all those times are regular time. Yes.
So this is what the fee structure that was in place, and then you're going to retain this.
Correct. Yeah.
Looking at this from a revenue perspective, over the course of a season, is this projected to sustain the operation as indoor did it? you know, being able to set aside capital as they would have done, you know, for maintenance of bubbles and those types of items. Is this revenue positive, I guess, is the question?
Well, I think when we structured the service levels, when we were just discussing how this would work, I think we always knew we were going to have to underwrite this to a certain degree. We used, you know, their fees to build that budget. So we think that would be at least as, you know, stable or financially stable as we were with that budget projection. It's gonna take a season to figure things out and see where we are, but we think this is a good starting point. As Darren said, it's these are the highest rates in the area. So we didn't see a need to raise them at this point. But you know, that all needs to be reevaluated after year one.
So what is the expectation for this season in terms of up or down? I mean, I don't think we need to turn a profit on this stuff. Just trying to understand what we're gonna see.
Up or down relative to what Indoor did?
Yeah, just in general, like, I think Andrew's question was, do these numbers sustain the cost of the facility or allow us to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was, yeah, Indoor consistently was able to generate revenue sufficient to maintain the operation, plus
Thanks.
set aside money in order to buy, upgrade, you know, facilities, your capital assets that they needed.
And we shared some of that.
Yeah,
Right.
right. And I'm just generally just trying to make sure that we are not bleeding that off, right? And saying, well, we can lower, or we can keep prices fixed because we can eat something. I want to make sure
Oh, I
that
see
we're
what- yeah.
asking these, at least these honest questions.
Sure. I mean, I think we need to look at year one to see what that looks like. I have to defer to Andrew a little bit to see if we built anything in for bubble replacement, like capital. Are we just looking at that as a capital expenditure? Okay.
The focus commitment to the personnel aspect is eating any of those proceeds that would have been
Right.
from the indoor season that they were able to sock away, because their personnel was, in the last 2 years at least, was volunteer work. So the aspect of going to a savings for capital improvements is not there at the transfer of the revenue to us, because we made the focused and concerted effort to put it in personnel off the top. So to say that in the first year, and, you know, it wraps across, you know, calendar years, but we'll monitor that. But in that indoor season, it's not going to look as a surplus in that season because of the added personnel.
Well, and I think, you know, I guess it's more the longer term question of, right, we've obviously wanted to make sure that we're improving overall operations of the tennis facility. That's why we're hiring, right, to, you know, and maintaining these people, but you know, and I think it's a fair question to let's wait until next year to really see what this looks like, but do we anticipate, you know, an improved service level and therefore more usage? Or,
And I'll say for historical purposes too, I mean, I wasn't here at the time of the last bubble replace, it was actually right when I first started, but their bubble replacements weren't cash plush. They weren't giving us 200,000 to replace the bubble. It was municipality, you were in years past, they always haven't been here's like we are now with reconstructing courts, giving us hundreds of thousands of dollars towards it. It was, you guys do it and then we'll pay you back over time.
okay,
So those types of things, we knew going into this whole exercise of taking over indoor was when a bubble does come up, well, we have the full leveraging power of debt, right? That could act similarly to do those types of things that necessarily you can be closer to a razor's edge of not necessarily generating a huge surplus and over and above, because we have those types of things that were being done anyway for the carrying cost of the cash.
So what you're presenting here is, this is our recommendation on how we manage this now. revisit in a certain period of time, and then we make the decision if we're under, do we fund it to the same way or do we make changes, that kind of thing?
Sure, yeah, like the whole transition, I think we were focused on service, not really covering recovering debt. And frankly, no rec operation that we run covers debt or capital, none. So that would be a completely different model than what we've been doing so far.
And I don't think anyone here has advocated that it needs to cover. I think most of us have said the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a chance we'll do much better than projected. I think we have to see, and Darren will get into some of the, this isn't exactly what Indoor did. We're doing things a little bit differently. And I think that, perhaps we're gonna use courts more efficiently and, drive programs and things like that. So, it remains to be seen how well we can perform.
Sorry.
Can I add something to the conversation?
Mhm.
I just wanted to remind the commission that at some point through the dissolution process of Indoor as a 501c3 and the transition agreement that was previously executed, the municipality will receive the assets of Indoor Tennis, being both the bubble structures and any remaining, I'll say, cash funds that are part of that organization. So we just don't know what that looks like yet.
Good. Great.
So now that rec is taking over, we kind of talked about having a priority of who's gonna get the subscriber time coming into this year. And we felt that the previous subscribing Mount Lebanon residents should have first priority to ask for their slot. And then after they have their applications in, we will then take residents. And then we will take previous subscribing non-residents and then just have an open application process for people asking for subscriber time.
Yeah, the goal for Darren and myself was to try to put more residents on the courts. Not that there was an overwhelming number of non-residents before, but I think, people had sort of a first right of refusal on their court time. We want to open that up to more people and just get more bodies on the courts, residents primarily.
I know we've talked about this with the pool or potentially restricting the pool. Is there any issue with this, Phil?
As long as it doesn't effectively exclude non-residents, which I don't think it will.
Okay, so like having that priority, because I know that's the way we, like we had certain time.
Yeah, again, it's not a problem, I'll say, to charge residents, non-residents, different prices. As long as that doesn't get so.
This way.
Right, like $200 an hour and $5 an hour.
Yes.
Got it, okay. And well, you might get into this, I'll hold my question.
So basically just how we're gonna have it in Sportsman, we'll have a resident program class with a deadline for Mount Lebanon residents, and we'll take all those applications in, and then after that deadline closes, we'll have a new application process for kind of an open request program in Sportsman. So kind of we know each application coming in by the second of when it comes in, and then we're gonna balance Indoor schedule of last year for previous subscribers and have all that listed in the application. Kind of a couple bullets down, there's gonna be a process for have your first, second, and third preference of what you'd like. No guarantees of time, we're gonna do our best to put the puzzle piece together. And honestly, there was a decent amount of subscribers in the morning and a lot at night, but pretty much midday, there weren't too many subscribers. So I think everyone's gonna have their option to have a say, especially with residents that were previous subscribers for what they want for this year. So I think we'll be able to put that puzzle together. Kind of the biggest change from Indoor from last year to this year coming up, we're not gonna do 30-minute increments. We're gonna try to maximize our schedule to the fullest potential. Right now, we do 1 hour at the top of the hour or 2 hours. We don't do any 30-minute increments. There won't be hour and a half, or you can't reserve a half-hour time block. Most of our private lessons are 1 hour in length, and most of our adult and junior clinics are 1 hour in length. So to have no kind of holes in our schedule, if people are reserving an hour and a half or a half hour, then it bumps down. So we're gonna have only 1 or 2 hour time slots to keep our schedule clean. We also won't have multiple slots starting out. So if you can have your name on an application once, you submit that application, you can't have another application in your same name. So if you had played multiple times last year in the bubble, you're allowed to put an application for your name, and then whoever you're playing with would have to put an application for the other time slot that you were reserving from the previous year.
But only if your name was on the reservation the previous year do you get that priority, like previous subscriber status. That also helps us open up to non-residents, or I'm sorry, to more new residents as well.
I haven't taken a lot of complaints related to tennis in general, but the few that I've gotten were always about time reservations, so few being available to residents that weren't part of clubs or indoor tennis. And if I remember correctly at the time, the complaints were always related to the time slots, either being like super early or really late. So it seems like these are addressing that, or potentially will address that.
I think it will. Also, you see here, we don't guarantee a time slot. So if you had 1 to 2:30 last year, you might get 1 to 3, or you might get, 2 to 3, you might get 2 to 4, but we're gonna reserve the right to slide time slots so that we don't have these gaps and holes in our schedule. And I hope that means we will have more efficiency and more people on the court.
Sounds good.
And then, once I have kind of all the pieces put in place from all the applications after our final deadline, then I'll reach out to everyone and we'll do payment for the entire season of the 27-week session and take it all up front with credit card, check, or cash. So,
As did indoor.
yes.
And that's the end.
Great.
What is sports?
That's our rec software,
And that covers
everything except golf.
everything, what it's called.
Golf has a Pro Shop Keeper. And the reason I've tried multiple times to get different golf course managers to buy in. I guess the fact is Pro Shop Keeper is very customized golf software. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It would give us some efficiencies, but not really them, I guess. So I don't fight them on that.
Are we still generally, well, it's been a long time since I've heard any complaints about the registration, the online registrations
Good.
are, yeah. But that doesn't mean that it can't be improved. Is it working well, or is the general feedback positive, or is it easy navigation?
I think it's pretty easy. Sportsman is in the midst of a major transition from their server-based to their web-based. We got on board early to transition to the hosted solution. Darren's Shop Tennis is among the first. My office was actually the first to transition to web. Darren came in and immediately looked at both versions and determined we need to be on web. It was like, he was very sure immediately. And so we, with IT, got them up and running on web. So they're transitioning there. Ice will be next, and pool, we're just gonna wait till next year, probably at this point. We've gone this far, but it is much better. There's a lot of efficiencies with it. I won't get into it, but, and then I think the next upgrade that Peak Software, that's our software provider, is looking at is that online component, and they're gonna completely revamp that. So I think if it's as robust as what we're seeing in web, it will be, a nice improvement and people will like it better. But like with all transitions, it's not without little hiccups. We have to get on with support and work through things. But I will say one thing about Peak Software, I know their techs by name. I can call someone's extension and talk to someone that I know personally, and they're in Utah, so it's not because I know them locally. And it's such a difference from other softwares where you have to fill out a form, you get a number, and you don't know what the status of your complaint is. So from that perspective, they've been great to work with. And they're able to put some of our suggestions for upgrades and changes into effect, which I appreciate.
I have to pass along a complaint I've passed along to you before, but when that new software allows, basically, the person said 4 people playing tennis, can each of the 4 pay their share?
Yeah.
As opposed to the one person having to collect money for all 4. At the time, you said the software just couldn't make it happen, so I will
Venmo.
make a point of throwing it out. I just throwing out the resident complaint to say this is a concern they had, that, you know, she didn't want to have to collect the money from her playing partners. I said, I will pass it along.
I get it, and Darren and I have talked to that because Darren's had access to several different tennis specific softwares, so we talked about it. I don't remember even where we landed on that. I know it's something that we would like to see happen, but there's so many variables, like, are these 4 people pass holders, or is one a pass holder or 2 a pass holder? Like, the mathematics and the logistics are a little difficult, but maybe the next presentation where we talk about how we're gonna do outdoor, we'll talk about this again.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other questions for Darren?
Yeah, I think it's a solid plan, and I could be here a year from now and we could be like, we need to change this, this and this, and we'll get to that at that point. So I'll bring the feedback back from this year coming up, but we're excited. We're excited to have the bubbles up, and I think the community's excited too, so.
Great. Thanks, Darren. So Dave, you're still up for swim center and filtration.
Okay, let me switch to presentation number 2 here.
Okay,
Maybe I'll do a little better than last time. Maybe. Here we go, slideshow. Got it. Okay, so just, we're gonna pick up where we left off last time and give you an update on our filtration water clarity issues. Just to recap, it's primarily due to a high bather load and inadequate filtration. We've taken some steps to minimize impacts in 2024. But we are recommending filtration system replacement prior to the 2025 season. So this is like a summary of those closures that we had this year thus far. I wish I could see my notes below this, and this would be way easier. Anyway, so I believe 9 of these were cloudy water, 3 maintenance. Only 1 was a full day closure. The rest were partial closures. You can see attendance and time that we closed in the comment section. So this, just so that there's a handle on exactly when and why we've closed so far.
Residual DE.
Yeah, DE stands for diatomaceous earth. That's our filter media. It is a very fine white powder. You do not want it in the pool. You want it coating your filter elements. And then due to that error, it was allowed to migrate back into the pool, where as soon as it's disturbed, it creates cloudy water. And that likely caused problems down the road as well.
Okay, thank you.
David, do we have numbers for pool closures in previous years?
We do not. We do not. I will say this, rarely had we closed previously due to cloudy water. Our pool closures are generally thunder, heavy rain, or some other maintenance related problem, pump failure or something like that. This was a very different season.
I'm looking at, so your first slide is high bather load, inadequate filtration, and I'm just trying to understand the level at which each of those is the issue, right? Because when I look at the numbers, and these are great, like I love seeing this data. The 800 plus people days are decreasing over the last 4 years, as is the average of people attending on 800 plus days. If we haven't had as many closures because of cloudy water in the past, but we're having them now, it would seem to be less likely that it is just bather load. Which would lead more toward possibly some of these other things, like inadequate filtration is maybe our filter becomes less efficient and it's more years in service, and that's more of the issue.
Yeah, as I said in the FAQs that were put out on July tenth, there's a lot of variables. I can't point to a single thing and tell you, this is the problem. I do know that since the installation, the renovation of the pool in 2014, we've had problems with filtration and cloudy water. You know, I can't say in the other years what, let's say, what level of risk was tolerated. I can tell you that this year we have 0 tolerance if we can't see the bottom of the pool. So that's one variable of many. I mean, it could be different bather habits, it could be aging equipment, it could be any number of things that we can't pinpoint. It could be the wrinkly floor and the lack of vacuuming, effective vacuuming that we've had this year. There's too many variables for me to tell you, but the one common denominator I know is when you get high bathers and, you know, the filter is compromised, we get cloudy water. That is a consistent.
Do we know, so we've got a preliminary cost from your research in terms of what that change of filtration is gonna be?
Mhm.
Do we know that if, so you had recommended in part changing the filtration and changing the bottom of the pool, which I think the commission said, hey, let's look at the prices of those things and talk about that possibly before budget time. Do we know, considering a lot of different variables, those two things are major changes? Would those things being changed help to mitigate somewhat some of the other issues like higher bather rate? So if we're having a conversation with the person who says, hey, you need to right size your filtration for the size pool this is, and knowing that on average, I'm making this number up, you get 1,100 people to the pool. Does that filtration change mitigate that possible issue of the people level?
Oh, I think it absolutely will. Like the engineer is gonna say, right now you have a 6-hour turnover at best. And you have X square feet of filter surface area. Based on our pipe size, he's going to spec a filter that is the maximum size, the shortest turnover rate, the maximum surface area that we can accommodate. Like this is what it's gonna be. And until I get that expert on board to see what we have and then, you know, study and spec that, I can't say with certainty what they would say, but I think we can do a lot better than what we're doing now.
David, is our filtration system Hayworth?
No, it is the filter itself, we have many Hayward parts and pieces.
Sure.
But the filter itself is MER, MER-MADE, MADE.
Okay.
It is a vacuum DE filter, so it's like a giant bathtub,
Mm-hmm.
rectangular filter elements that are enclosed in a fabric cover, or we call them socks sometimes. And then that sock is then coated with DE.
Okay.
Through the backwashing process.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next slide. These are the mitigation efforts, or at least the major ones that we put in place. We talked about the, you know, adding the adult swims and safety breaks. That's not new. The increased vacuuming, those two things I reported on at the last meeting. Some new things that we have done. We did a major degrease and acid washing of the filters overnight. We made adjustments to the way we backwash. So instead of just refilling the tank after cleaning with pool water, we're now using fresh water. And then coating the DE or the elements with DE with fresh water, so that the thinking here is once we acid washed and those elements, they're as clean as they're possibly going to be. And you don't generally want to expose them to oils and things that are going to plug up those pores in the fabric covers. So this was just one extra little thing that we could do to make it a cleaner, better backwash. We're filling with fresh water, and then coating with DE. That way, no dirty water is directly touching your clean elements. That's not part of the standard backwash procedure. This is something that we decided internally just made sense.
No question. When it rains, does that help or not help?
Rain really doesn't matter to us. I mean, we can correct pH. You get some fresh water, helps a little. The danger with rain is it comes with thunder and lightning, and if it interrupts our power for, more than a minute or two, we can't get back the filter. You have to then backwash and start over. And that's a huge problem. Well, as soon as the power interrupts, the disconnect opens, it's only gonna close if it's done manually. So if it happens in the middle of the night, it's done. If we're there and we can sprint, like a lights flicker, we can sprint in and turn it on before DE starts to fall off, we're okay.
Well, like PCs, we have the power source.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing like that we do here.
No, I mean, it might exist. I'm not an electrician, but this is a large consumer of electricity. I don't know that there's something that could just power that absent,
Covering the minute.
shore
I mean,
power.
if it's out long time, forget it, but I mean, if just for a
Yeah.
minute, it seems like, geez.
I don't think there's any way around that with a DE filter. If this was a sand filter, the power goes out, you go back in and you flip the switch whenever it comes back and everything's fine. DE it's very fine filtration, but it's very high maintenance.
Okay.
So there's a trade-off there. And in our case, it's not big enough to do what we are asking it to do anyway, so it's difficult. Another thing we did was just lower our pH and chlorine levels. That may seem counterintuitive, chlorine oxidizes contaminants in the water. It's a good thing. But in particular with our kind of chlorine, which is calcium hypochlorite, it's a solid. The more you're putting in, the more solids you're putting in, the more calcium you're putting in, the higher saturation levels are in the water. High saturation trends towards cloudy water. Low saturation tends towards clear water. These aren't major swings. They're obviously within the acceptable range, or we wouldn't do them. But small changes, I think, are making a difference. All of these things working in concert with one another. The last thing, which directly attacks the problem that I've pointed out, is we've added supplemental filtration. We have 2 canister vacs. There are manual vacuum cleaners. They're essentially a portable filtration system unto themselves. So we run those overnight just as a filter. They are both set up in the deep end. They run for maybe 8-9 hours overnight as 2 supplemental filters. In addition to that, I installed another similar type filtration system in the filter room that has supply and return lines into the filter tank itself, and it runs 24/7. So that's our supplemental filtration. I think all these things working together have made some very big differences. The water is clear, the filter runs are longer. We haven't closed in the last 10 days. We've had some slow days. We haven't had anything to compare to the scorching 90+ degree, 8-9 day streak that we had. But we have had 600, 700, 800, 900 attendance days, and we've closed for less. So I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing. I mean, this is perception and anecdotal, but I think the water is as clean and clear as I have ever seen it. So I think what we're doing is working. There's no question. I need a string of 1,000+ days before I would say we got this for the rest of the season. But I'm very encouraged, even as we started making some changes, initially you would still see after backwashing and the next morning, still dull, cloudy-ish, not water where you couldn't see the bottom, but cloudy. It was dull, cloudy water the next day. This is different. This is a big, big change.
I was there yesterday. It looked pretty clear.
David,
And
am I right in understanding that when we added the supplemental filtration, that some of that was actually your design? Now, if my husband had done it, we'd call it jerry rigging, but clearly you are able to know how to do these things and do them well. But am I not correct that this was really something that you went ahead and designed and put into place to help?
That's correct.
Thank you. Nice job.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Desperate times. We were trying to throw everything at this that we possibly could. We don't want to be closed. That's the last thing I want. I think we've made some great strides and I'm very encouraged at this point.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
That too, yeah. So the remaining mitigation effort, other than, maybe one other Hail Mary that I don't even think is necessary anymore. We were gonna consider enzymes, which would be to treat the oils in the water. But based on what I'm seeing, I don't think that's necessary. We went ahead and ordered them, just to try one dose. It can't hurt. Let's see what happens. That was a long time ago. They still haven't even come in yet. I don't even know that they're necessary. We'll see. And we might take them and keep them on hand as a precaution. I would be reluctant to add them at this point too, because every other chemical you add into the water is yet another variable. I would probably just keep them on the shelf unless, and unless they're needed, if the current efforts aren't working. So that leaves us with the option to limit attendance. I'm going to tell you now, we can go through the slides and the math and look at the projected lost revenue and all those other things, but I'm going to tell you right now, I would not recommend it at this point, and I'll get into that as we go through some more of these slides. So the number I threw out was 800 as the threshold, and that's just based on my experience, where I think, that we can handle, although there were days less than 800 where we did close. But this is the number where we started with and the number that your calculations are based. So, and the calculations included how many 800+ attendance days do I predict we have left in the season based on, where we are now and previous history. The average attendance on those 800+ days and the makeup of those people who may be denied admission on those days. So that's just kind of what we're looking at. This is a very busy slide, but it's just a simple 2-color scale of attendance from 21 to the present. Yellow being high attendance and green being low attendance, and then the shades in between. So you can see the yellowy areas are areas of higher relative attendance. I've, really the part of this is what's at the bottom there. The number where we had greater than 800 people over the years, we had 26 total days in 21, 28 days in 22, 20 in 23, and then 20 so far this year, and we're a little past halfway. Then we took and averaged all of those 800+ days in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you're gonna go over 800, odds are it's gonna be on average, it's gonna be 1,112 people. So that's really what this slide is looking at here. So we were asked about the percentage of pass holders, members that were non-resident, so that's just the reason for this slide. It really doesn't factor into the calculations at all, but it's a very, very small number, which we kind of. So next, we look at, I looked at pool admissions. I was working on this probably on July 6th, so that's the reason for the date range. And that's, this bears out, you could do full years of 21, 22, 23. We're roughly split on admission 50-50 between day passes and members. That's really all we're saying here, and that's just one sample. But it would be true no matter what. So the lost revenue estimate, we start in the little chart at the top. With day passes on 800+ days. If we expect 1,112 people and we limit at 800, that's 312 that are going to be denied admission. Half of them are day pass holders, so that's 156. Then we extrapolate that based on the percentage of those day pass holders that come through the gate on average. 40% are adults, 48% are students, and the rest are smaller. Apply that fee for that day pass, multiply it by the number of estimated 800+ days left, which is only 5 incidentally at this point. 25 is our average, times the 156 day passes, and you're going to lose about $7,000 in day pass revenue. Then you could just, the plan, at least in my mind, to compensate pass holders on those days if they were turned away at the gate would be to just credit their account the equivalent day pass for that day. So if you're a family of 4 and it's 2 of you that show up, a parent and a child, it's going to be a $9 and a $10 credit on your account.
Mm-hmm.
So the total cost would really be just very similar to what you're seeing above, based on we expect 50% of these people to be members, and it's going to be a similar makeup of those people. So figure 14,000, 7 are going to be lost revenue, and 7 would be giving money back if you limit it to 800. Then this is really more separate from the limited attendance. This is how do we compensate members generally for lost time, past and future. So my proposal is you would just credit / refund. It could be a credit on their account. They can ultimately ask for a refund. We always start with credit to account, but it's just a simple portion of what they would have lost calculated at the end of the season, because we don't know the universe of closures. And when I say scheduled days, I mean like days that we are going to open above and beyond what we've advertised if we have the staff to do so. So you just take days closed for 2 or more hours. That's what we use for a rain check. 2 hours is our threshold. We think a visit is, reasonable at 2 hours. You got your money's worth. So if you came for 2 hours and it rained, we wouldn't give you a rain check. If you got less, you would get a rain check. So that's the reason why I chose 2 hours. It's just a significant amount of time. If I close for 30 minutes, I don't think it rises to the level of we need to compensate people for, we closed at 6:30 instead of 7. So that's divided by so the number of those days divided by the number of scheduled days times the cost of the membership. Examples below, a family of 4. Right now, like if you calculated this today, there were 6 days where we were closed for 2 hours or more. So, and there's 87 days on the schedule today. So that's like, it works out to like 7% right now. So it'd be, in the total universe of passes right now, if you said, this is the plan, do it, we would give back $18,142. You could say it needs to be a 3-hour day. You could say, well, some of these people may have actually attended that day, so it really shouldn't be 1 for 1. Maybe it's 60% of the day. I mean, I don't know, you could do this a dozen different ways, no problem. I'm just saying this is, a pretty clean, I think, way, and I think a fairly, reasonable way to do it, but I could do it a different way.
I mean, this is why I think it's important to look at data. I'm looking at this and seeing, out of those 12 times we've closed in the last couple months, 3 of them were for maintenance, as you mentioned, which means 9 were for cloudy water. Of those 9, only 6 were for over 800. So like you said, it's probably a random number. All of them are over 575. So when we've had, so maybe that's a better number and maybe the numbers are a little bit more than what we've calculated here. But then I look at the last 10 days roughly where you said we haven't had any closures and we've had multiple days over 575, even over 800 and 900, and it doesn't seem like we've had issues. So it doesn't seem to me, looking at this data, that we're justified in closing or would need to close the pool. I'm sorry, restrict based on numbers.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying I don't think it makes sense at this point. I think it probably isn't gonna happen. I mean, I can't promise, but based on what I'm seeing, I don't see, if everything continues on course, I don't think it's gonna happen again. And even if it did, I know. I'm playing with
But I
fire.
mean, we have a ton of data to look at and say, all the things that we think are even in part contributing factors have shown over the last 10 days that they've been able to maintain the pool without needing to close it. So assuming that that will continue until the pool is closed or when we're done, Labor Day, whatever, it doesn't seem from this data that we would have an issue. So it's like we're looking at the data.
We're on the right path. I mean, we're subject to the fates on this one.
Sure.
Sorry, and everything else, but I mean, I feel like, okay, so far the trend line's good, hope it continues. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. However, we're hopeful that this will continue in the right direction.
Right, and the other thing I'll say about the data is and Craig, you may have been either saying this directly or hinting at this anyway. When we do close, it's typically late in the day anyway. We might not hit 800 until 5:30, if the water's cloudy, we're closing anyway. So I think projecting 5 days and then trying to put all this into effect for something that may not even happen doesn't make sense. That's why I'm not recommending it anymore. If we had closed 6 out of the last 10 days, I would be recommending something different,
yeah.
but I mean, the water is objectively clear and possibly as clear as it has ever been since the renovation. I don't think we need to do this to restrict. I just don't see it.
So then the last question I have is, what's our ability to maintain the pool at this level? Is it costing more money to maintain at the level that we're doing, right? So you mentioned, we're lowering our pH and chlorine levels. Presumably there's a cost to that. To use Ann's phrase, jerry rigging of, filtration. I don't know what the cost to those are, but are we able to maintain the pool at its current clear level? Or I guess what we have to look at eventually is what's our ability to do that faithfully and realistically and practically, and what's the cost of that versus the cost of adding more significant filtration?
Based on every consultant, engineer, pool professional that I talked to, no one said, I have a prefab, mini system I can ship to you, have it installed in a day or two, give you significantly better filtration without, with minimal downtime. Nobody said that. So I don't see any engineered solution helping us this year other than what we're doing. We've done all that can be done. No one is beating down my door to say, I've got a solution for you. It's not gonna happen. So the consultants and the people that we're talking to now are more about the long term, which we haven't hit the last two slides, but I can discuss those with you. They're more about those long-term solutions.
We have a gaggle of Girl Scouts. I can see in
Yeah.
the other room.
Yeah.
Bouncing around in there, so just as we're trying to,
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. Do we need to start the meeting?
well, there's something related, rec center roof there we're voting on tonight, so we may know.
Okay.
Right, is that?
Yeah, Josh Scanlon from Gateway has the report on.
Want me to hit the road?
Center.
Well, I think maybe we'll pick up this topic and the swim or the rig update in another meeting, just because of
Okay.
our audience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Do we need a review from Josh before you go vote?
You through it pretty quick. Yeah.
Okay.
Voting on tonight, so, right?
Yes, we are voting. This is the only,
It's like the only thing we're voting on tonight, so.
Yes.
Mhm.
yes. Okay, good evening. I am here to present the Public Safety Center roof replacement. So I'll go through the issues and history, the project scope, budgets and bids, and next steps.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
So the project in general was a replacement of the existing roof membrane on the public safety building.
Insulation, yep.
The root cause of the issues that led to this point are that membrane's about at its useful lifespan. Over the past few years, there's been numerous leaks and patches to the roof. And there's also a significant number of penetrations for equipment and a less than ideal level of insulation. So the project is removal of the existing roof membrane, replacing any wet insulation that's been damaged over the
Mhm.
previous years due to leaks. Addition of 2 inches of insulation, that increases the R value to R30. That's about the most insulation we can get in there before it started affecting drainage on top of the roof. Installation of new membrane, it has a 30-year warranty with it. And then additionally installing a membrane and flashing over the rear parapet wall that helps to keep the water from getting in behind the wall there. Our estimate was $200,000 for construction. The initial bid in 2023 was at $300,000. That was not awarded. We rebid the project this year. No change in scope, and the new bid price is $191,457.
Great.
So next steps are recommendation for award, and timeline would be construction of fall of this year.
Andrew, from the budget, where the budget was 300,500. Was that from the general fund? Where was that? I was gonna get $100,000 delta a good way.
Budgeted for it.
Right, I'm saying that. 100,000 less, yay.
Yeah.
But was that, should be capital?
It's always general funding. So.
Or that, you know. The budget.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
Josh, just to be clear, the engineer's recommendation based on the agenda item is just for the base bid, not that. Correct, for the base bid, not the alternate.
Okay. Cool. All right. We can dismiss and you guys can go to your other meeting, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm.